So today we're tackling something that's both incredibly complex and, for many, deeply uncomfortable. We're breaking down what our source material calls the Big Indian Caste Lie. This idea that a system many believe is a thing of the past, well, it might just be shaping millions of lives right now, every single day.
You've probably heard this before, right? Maybe you've even said it yourself. Where is caste these days? I don't even know my own caste. It's a phrase you hear a lot in modern urban India, and it feels like progress. Our source uses this as the perfect starting point because, for so many people, it feels absolutely true. But the question is it the whole story?
And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? It leads us to the central question of this entire analysis. When someone says they're unaware of caste, are we looking at a genuine sign of a more progressive society, or is it actually a sign of privilege? That's the tension we're going to explore.
So let's dive into our first section, the caste denial. The source material puts forward a really powerful, maybe even jarring idea with this subtitle, "If you don't know your caste, you haven't suffered because of it."
Think about it like this. Our source suggests that being able to ignore caste is, in itself, a kind of luxury. If you've never been turned down for a rental, or faced insults, or hit a systemic barrier because of your last name, then, of course, caste would seem invisible. It's like not noticing the wind when it's always at your back.
Okay, but let's be real. Does this stuff actually still happen in the 21st century, especially to people who are, successful and powerful? Well, the source provides some truly mind-boggling examples that suggest the answer is a resounding yes.
I mean, just let this one sink in for a moment. We're talking about the President of India, the head of state, the highest office in the entire country. And even he was reportedly not immune to this kind of exclusion. If the president can face this, what does that say about the reality for millions of ordinary people? It's just a stunning example of how deep these social hierarchies can run.
And here's another one that shows how these ancient ideas of purity and pollution still have a grip. A deputy prime minister, Babu Jagjeevan Ram, a prominent Dalit leader, unveils his own statue, and afterwards it's reportedly purified with holy water. The symbolism there is just so potent. It implies that even a person with immense political power can be seen as inherently impure.
And we have to be crystal clear here. This isn't just about symbolic slights or hurt feelings. The source material points to absolutely horrific modern-day violence. We're talking about a man allegedly having his hands cut off just for riding a motorcycle, something seen as a privilege he wasn't entitled to. For so many people, caste is not some abstract social theory. It is a brutal, dangerous, and very present reality.
Now check out this comparison our source makes. It's a tale of two very different responses to historical injustice. In the United States, after the murder of George Floyd, you saw this massive public reckoning. You had people literally kneeling in apology for systemic racism. The source then turns the lens on India and asks a really tough question. Where has that moment been for caste? Where's the mass public apology from privileged castes for centuries of something like untouchability? It points to a really profound cultural difference in how history is confronted.
Okay, so this brings us to another argument you hear all the time. It's the idea that the original system wasn't about birth at all, but about your work, your qualities, your karma. Essentially, that it was a meritocracy. But was it really? And to really get this, our source says we have to understand the difference between the theory and the reality. On one hand, you have the Varna system, this four-part social blueprint you read about in ancient texts. But the lived reality for thousands of years has been the Jati system. That's a much more rigid and complex web of thousands of birth-based communities, where you are born into your place in the hierarchy.
And this quote right here, this is the classic defense, as our source points out. It's this very appealing idea that everyone starts on a level playing field, and it's your actions, your deeds, and qualities that determine your station in life. It reframes the whole thing as something fluid and fair.
But then, the source hits us with this absolutely brilliant counterpoint. It poses a simple question about Valmiki, the legendary author of the epic Ramayana. By any measure, writing the Ramayana is a supreme scholarly and spiritual deed. So by that deeds not birth logic, shouldn't he be celebrated as a Brahmin? Yet he's historically remembered by his birth origin. It's one example that sort of dismantles the whole argument, showing that in practice, birth has almost always trumped deeds.
And that leads us right into what is probably the most heated, controversial part of the entire modern debate: reservations or affirmative action. There's a very common belief out there that these policies are actually the main reason caste is still a thing today. So let's see how the source tackles this idea.
And the source just flips the whole argument on its head with one simple question. It's a classic chicken and egg problem. Did reservation policies create the problem of caste, or was reservation the medicine designed to treat the pre-existing disease of caste discrimination? It really forces you to stop and think about the root cause versus the symptom.
Now, this is really interesting. To bolster its point, the source tells us to look at some powerful sectors where reservations don't exist. Think about the top levels of the media, the higher judiciary, or the C-suites of the private sector. The argument here is that these fields, free from affirmative action, haven't magically transformed into diverse, meritocratic utopias. In fact, as the source points out, data often shows they lack significant social diversity.
So, after all of that, where do we go from here? What does the future look like? Our final section looks at some of the most challenging questions the source material leaves us with about what a truly equal India would even mean.
And the source ends with this incredibly provocative thought experiment. It asks, in a society that might idealize ancient social structures, who does the work? Who cleans the sewers? Who cuts the hair? Who handles the garbage? These aren't just practical questions. They're designed to force a confrontation with the uncomfortable logic of a system that has, for centuries, tied human beings to specific and often degrading forms of labor based on their birth.
We're going to end on this, a powerful, simple question asked 700 years ago by the poet Saint Kabir. From a single drop, all are born. Who then is a Brahmin and who is a Shudra? It's such a profound idea, right? That at our core, we're all made of the same stuff. And it leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Why is a question with such a simple, beautiful answer still so incredibly difficult for us to put into practice?